Today we're going to be looking at Learning Unit 2, Theme 2, and we are going to be looking at the socio-cultural learning theory. Now, learning is a social process. We saw that quite clearly during the COVID-19 lockdowns, where people were able to work, they were able to study, students were able to study. However, doing so in isolation was not nearly as effective as learning with other people and through other people. So if you think about it, having someone who is an expert in the field talking to you about the subject matter is going to help you a lot more than you trying to figure out the subject matter yourself. Having someone next to you who asks a question that you hadn't thought of helps you learn about the subject matter. Making a mistake and having someone correct you helps you learn about the subject matter. Essentially, the more people that are involved in the learning process, the more effective the learning process is. To go back to COVID-19, the students who had access to online resources, who had access to synchronous learning sessions, who could email their teachers or WhatsApp their teachers, found it much easier to learn and learnt a lot more than the students who only had access to, for example, a textbook, and they had to learn by themselves through one method. So it's very important to remember that the more people who are involved, the better our chances of learning are. The next thing we need to remember is that culture and language play a distinct role in the way we learn. So our culture's approach to learning and to education are going to have a huge impact on the way we learn. So if your culture is a culture that encourages you to see the teacher as the expert and you are purely the student, then you are most likely going to sit in a classroom and take down everything the teacher says and expect the teacher to give you the answers. Whereas if you come from a culture that encourages you to challenge those in authority, then you are more likely to have a student who's going to argue with you, who's going to ask questions, who's going to ask the difficult questions, who is going to see themselves in a more equal partnership with you in their learning. Now, the next thing we need to look at is the zone of proximal development. Now, if we think of the bottom of the screen over here as what a learner is capable of doing right now, and the top of the screen over here as what the learner would be able to do under perfect circumstances. This area in between the bottom and the top is called the zone of proximal development. Now, our job as teachers is to provide a learning environment that takes the learner through as much of the zone of proximal development as possible. So, according to the socio-cultural learning theory, a good teacher and a good teaching environment will help a learner succeed much more than they would do by themselves. So therefore, if we provide a very effective learning environment, we should be able to move the student much higher through the zone of proximal development and get them much closer to their full potential.